Daf Yomi, tractate Avodah Zarah, page 53. Starting at the bottom of 52b, there are those who teach Rabbi Hillel's statement with regard to the latter clause of the Mishnah. A Jew cannot revoke the status of the object of idol worship of a Gentile. The Gemara asks, isn't that obvious? Said Rabbi Hillel, son of Rabbi Valis, Hillel, the Rabbi Valis, lo nitzracha sheyesh lo b'shutvus, v'kamash lo nitzracha shut lo b'vater d'nachi, v'vanach d'nav shem v'vater. No, this halacha is necessary in a case where the Gentile has partnership in the idol. And it teaches us that it is only a Jew who cannot revoke the status of a Gentile's object of idol worship. But a Gentile can revoke the status of his own object of idol worship. Okay? Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe Omer, Avodah Zarah shel Yisrael, en la b'tila elomis. Ma elomis, Rabbi Hillel bered Rabbi Valis, lo nitzrecha, אלא שיש לו גוי, יש לו לגוי בשוטרוס, וכל מה שפלון ישחור אל הנייתן נפשי פלח. There are those who teach Rabbi Hillel's statement with regard to a braita. Rabbi Shimon ben Menashe says the status of a Jew's object of idol worship can never be revoked. What is the reason for the additional emphasis of the term never? Rabbi Hillel, son of Rabbi Valis, says the emphasis is necessary only for a case where the Gentile has partnership in the idol. And it teaches us that the Jew worships the idol based on his own intentions. Therefore, although the Gentile revokes the status of his share, the Jew's share remains forbidden. That's the end of the Talmud portion for that Mishnah, and now we continue on to the next Mishnah. Zog the Mishnah, Ketzad mevatlo, zog the heading Mishnah, Ketzad mevatlo, Kata roish oznam, roish choitmo, roish esbo, Pachaso, אף על פי שלא חיסרו, ביטלו. רק בפוניה, השתין בפוניה, גררו, זרק בה את הצועה, הרי זו אינו בטל בחר או משכנה, רבי אומר ביטל וחכמים אומרים לא ביטל. The Mishnah says, how does a Gentile revoke the status of an object of idol worship? If he cuts off the tip of its ear, or the tip of its nose, or its fingertip, or if he crushed it, even though he did not remove any part of it, in all these cases, he thereby revoked its status as an object of idol worship. If he spat before the idol, urinated before it, dragged it on the ground, or threw excrement at it, the status of this idol is not revoked, as this is only a temporary display of scorn, and afterward the Gentile might continue to worship the idol. If the Gentile sold it or mortgaged it, and just bear in mind, when I say about Gentiles here, I don't want any Gentiles to become offended, because the Gentiles that they're talking about are basically talking about like idolaters. And not all Gentiles today are idolaters. And so it's a different time and a whole different context. And we're talking about people who had bought and sold idols and worshipped them. It's not like that today. And if the Gentile sold it or mortgaged, or Yehuda Nasi says, he thereby revoked its status. And the rabbis say that he did not revoke its status. That's the end of that. And that's the Mishnah. Now something more. The Mishnah teaches that if the Gentile crushed the idol without removing any part of it, the status of the idol is revoked. The Gemara asks, in a case where he did not remove any part of it, by what action did he revoke its status? Rav Zera says, the Mishnah is referring to a case where he crushed its face with a hammer, destroying its form, even though none of its stone was removed. Rakak bifanea, v'hishtim bifanea. If the Mishnah teaches if he spat before the idol, or if he urinated before it, I think it says in the Mishnah, rak bifanea, but when they quote it, they say rakak. Okay, anyway, always been a little mistake there. Maybe it's not a mistake, maybe it's on purpose. Okay, he spat or idol urinated before this status. The idol is not revoked as is only a temporary display of scorn. The Gemara asks from where these matters derived. Amar Chizkiah, Amar Kram, v'haya ki yir'av v'hikatzaf, v'kilel b'malko, uve'elohav u'pana lemala. וכתיב, פטרי, ועל ארץ יביט, והנה צרה וחשיכה לגומר. תיאפת גם דקילה למלכו, אירועיו ובנה למעלה, and ארץ יביט. Chizkiah says, this is derived from a verse as the verse states, and it shall come to pass that, when he shall be hungry, he shall fret and curse his king and his God, and turn his face upward. Isaiah 8:21, and it is written after this verse, and he shall look to the earth, and behold distress and darkness, the gloom of anguish, and outspread thick darkness. Isaiah 8:22. This indicates that even though he cursed his king and his idolatrous God, and he turned his face upward toward God, nevertheless he subsequently looks to the earth, and beholds distress and darkness, since he returns to his idol worship. Machra mishkana Rabbi Omer bitel fure Ze'eri amar Rabbi Yochanan Rabbi Yermi barav barav Chad amar machloikes b'tzoyrech goy Au b'tzoyrech Yisroel diber akol bitel Chad amar b'tzoyrech Yisroel machloikes. The Mishnah teaches that the Gentiles sold it or mortgaged it. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says he thereby revoked its status, and the rabbis say he did not revoke its status. The Gemara cites a dispute between that which Zeri says and that Rabbi Yochanan says, and that which Rabbi Yermi says. Rabbi says, one says, the dispute between Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi and the rabbis applies only when the Gentile sold his idol to a Gentile smith, but when he sold it to a Jewish smith, everyone agrees that by selling the idol, the Gentile revoked its status, as he knows that the Jewish smith will certainly melt it down. And one says the dispute applies to the case where he sold the idol to a Jewish smith. Tzorech v'Yisroel machloikes, אבל tzorech goy divrei hakol lo bitel, oy dilma ben baze uben baze machloikes. A dilemma was raised before the sages. According to the second opinion, does the dispute apply only to the case where he sold the idol to a Jewish smith? But if he sold it to a Gentile smith, everyone agrees that he did not revoke its status by selling it. Or perhaps, both in this case and in that case, there is a dispute. Tasheva. The Gemara replies, come in here, right? Adam Rebbe, Nirin bid divorai, Kishimachra lechabla. The Gemara replies, come in here, Braita, as Rabbi Yehuda Nasi said, my statement that by selling the idol the Gentile revokes its status appears correct in a case where he sold it for the purpose of destruction, and the statement of my colleagues that its status is not revoked appears correct in a case where he sold it for the purpose of worship. My lechablo, u'may le'ovdo yinema lechablo, lechablo mamish, le'ovda mamish. My time in demand, the amar bite, my time in demand, the amar lo bite. The Gemara explains the Braita. What is the meaning of selling the idol for destruction, and what is the meaning of selling it for worship? If we say that selling it for destruction means literally that he knew that it was being bought for the purpose of destruction, and that selling it for worship means literally that it was bought for the purpose of worship, this is difficult. What is the reasoning of the one who says that the Gentile revoked the idol's status, even though he knew that the buyer intended to worship it? And what is the reasoning of the one who says that he did not revoke its status, even though he knew that the buyer intended to destroy it? Rather, is it not referring to a case where the buyer's intentions were not known with certainty, and accordingly selling the idol for destruction means selling it to the one who will presumably destroy it in the future? And who is that buyer? This is referring to a Jewish smith. Similarly, selling the idol for worship means selling it to someone who will presumably worship it in the future. And who is that buyer? This is referring to the Gentile smith. Since Yehoshua states that his opinion appears correct in the case of a Jewish smith, and the opinion of his colleagues appear correct in the case of a Gentile smith, one may conclude from the Braita that there is a dispute both in this case and in that case. Lo, hakikama. Amar Rabbi, nirin divrei lechaverai kishmach lechablo ma'anu. Tzar Yisrael shav chaverai lonechtu golai. Ela shikishmach lo ibda, aval lechablo moduli. The Gemara rejects this suggestion. No, this is what the Braita is saying. Rabbi Yehuda said, my statement that the idol status is revoked appears to my colleagues correct in a case where he sold it for the purpose of destruction. And who is it who buys the idol with the intent of destroying it? This is referring to a Jewish smith. This is because even my colleagues disagreed with me. Only in a case where he sold it for the purpose of worship. But when he sold it to a Jewish smith for the purpose of destruction, they concede to my opinion. ומצבהן עבודה זרה, אם עד שלא נשא מועס משך יחזיר, ואם נשא מועס משך יוליד לים המלח. The Gemara raises a rejection from a Braita with regard to one who buys broken vessels made from gold or silver from the Gentiles and finds among them an object of idol worship. If he pulled the object of idol worship, thereby performing an act of acquisition before he gave the money to the Gentile, he may return the object of idol worship to the Gentile. But if he pulled it after he gave the money to the Gentile, he may not return it. Since the idol status was not revoked, he must take it and cast it into the Dead Sea. The Gemara explains the objection. Granted, if you say that in the case of a Gentile who sells an object of idol worship to a Jewish smith, there is a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis. The Braita is not difficult in accordance with whose opinion is Braita. Is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who hold that when a Gentile sells an idol to a Jewish smith, he does not thereby revoke its status. But if you say that that's a dispute between Rabbi Yehuda and the rabbis, applies only when the idol is sold to a Gentile smith. But in the case of a Jewish smith, everyone agrees that the Gentile revoked the idol status. Then, in accordance with whose opinion is this Braita? Shani Adam the Gemara answers, it is different there, as the Gentile sold the metal with understanding that he was selling broken vessels, and he did not sell the metal with the understanding that he was selling an object of idol worship. He therefore had no intention of revoking his status. The Rabbanon learned, or she the sages taught if a Gentile borrowed money against the object of idol worship, using it as collateral, or with regard to another case where a rock slide fell on it, or in a case where a robber stole it, or a case where the owners abandoned it and went overseas. The following halacha applies. We now turn to 53b, top of the page, with the words Im atidin lachzor. Continuing on the top of Nun Gimel Amud Beis, with the words Im atidin lachzor. In any case, in any of these cases, if the owners will return in the future, as was in the case in the war of Joshua when he conquered Eretz Yisrael, and the status of the object of the idol worship is not revoked. The Gemara comments, and it is necessary for the bride to state all of these cases, as had the bride taught only the case where the Gentile borrowed money against the object of idol worship, one would say that in a case the Gentile did not revoke its status, as he did not sell it, and he did not indicate that he intended to relinquish it. But in the case where a rock slide fell on it, since it did not clear the rocks, say that he revoked the status of the object of idol worship. It is therefore necessary to teach this case as well. Listim and had the bride taught only the case where a rock slide fell on the idol, one would say that in that case the status is not revoked because the owner thinks to himself, the idol lies under the rock safely. Whenever I want it, I shall take it, and he feels no need to clear the rock slide immediately. But in the case where robbers stole it, since he is not searching after it, this indicates that he revoked its status. It is therefore necessary to teach this case as well. Mishum desavar rigoy shakile Yiflach palach le Yisrael shakla Aydi lamea yikoy mizab legoy lepalach le Aval dinichu abaylim Alch b'nisayam Midelo shaklu behadayu V'ator betul etzrir. And had the bride to tell only the case where robbers stole the idol, one would say that in that case its status is not revoked because the owner thinks to himself, if a Gentile took it, he will worship it. If a Jew took it, since it is of great monetary value, he will sell it to a Gentile, and the borrower will worship it. There is therefore no indication that the Gentile intends to revoke its status. But in the case where the owners abandoned the idol and went overseas, since they did not take it with them, this indicates that they revoked its status. It is therefore necessary to teach this case as well. Im atidin lachzor kimilchemet Yehoshua eno betel amid midei Yehoshua midado hachi kamar im atidin lachzor ayu kimilchemet Yehoshua ben betela. The Braita states, if the owners will return in the future, as was in the case of the war of Joshua, when he conquered Eretz Yisrael, and the status of the object of idol worship was not revoked. The Gemara asks, is it so that after the war of Joshua, the Gentiles returned home? They were defeated and killed and did not return home. The Gemara explains, this is what the Braita is saying. If the owners will return in the future, the idol has the same status as did the idols of the Gentiles killed in the war of Joshua, who intended to return. They just happened not to make it. They intended to return and did not revoke the status of idol, and therefore its status is not revoked. ולמה לי למילוס במלחמת יהושע? מילוס אגב ורקם כמש מלון. כי אז יאמר יהוד ורב ישראל שזכו לבנו להשתחוות ויסלב וישתחוות לעשו. The Gemara asks, and why should I associate this halacha with the war of Joshua? Just say any war that I guess a guy would come back, non-Jew, and worship his idol. The Gemara answers, it teaches us a matter in passing, that the halachot of idol worship may be derived from the war of Joshua, as may be illustrated by that, which Yehoshua says that Rav says, in the case of a Jew who set a brick upright in order to bow to it, but did not actually bow to it, and a Gentile came and bowed to it, the Gentile rendered it prohibited, even though it was not his brick. כתחילה אשרת ישראל תאמר רחמנה ואשריהם תשרפון באש מחלי ירושע ירחם עשיהם ואין אדוני סודו שאין לו שלום. The Gemara explains, from where do we derive that he rendered it prohibited? Rabbi Elazar says this halacha is like the halacha that applied at the outset of the Jewish people's conquest of Eretz Yisrael, when the Torah commanded them to destroy any trees that were used as part of idolatrous rites. As the merciful one states, and you shall break down their altars, and you shall burn their asherim with fire. Deuteronomy 12:3. Now, Eretz Yisrael is the inheritance of the Jewish people from their ancestors, and a person does not render forbidden an item that is not his, if so. How could the Gentiles render the trees forbidden, as the land was not theirs? If the trees are forbidden because some of them might have been those trees that were worshipped initially, before God gave the land to Abraham, it would not have been necessary to destroy them. Rather, the Jews could have forced the Gentiles to revoke their status, and since the Asherim were objects of Gentiles' idol worship, a mere revocation would have been sufficient to render them permitted. Galu adaytayu tenicha lahu b'avodah Zarah b'chiyat hagoyim shlichusa tidu avdiach nami Yisrael shezak levena gal yadayta tenicha le b'avodah Zarah kiyas hagoy v'lachna shlichusa didei gavid. Rather, since the Jewish people worshipped the golden calf, they revealed their intentions and indicated that they were amenable to idol worship. And when the Gentiles came and engaged in idol worship, they were in effect carrying out their agency on behalf of the Jewish people. The Asherim were therefore considered objects of Jews' idol worship whose status cannot be revoked. So too in the case of a Jew who set a brick upright in order to bow to it. He thereby revealed his intentions and indicated that he is amenable to idol worship. And when a Gentile came and worshipped it, he was carrying out the agency on behalf of the Jew. The Gemara challenges, but perhaps it is only with regard to the golden calf, that the Jewish people were amenable to worshipping it, but not with regard to any other type of idol worship. The Gemara counters. The verse states, with regard to the golden calf, and they said, "These are your gods, O Israel." Exodus 32, verse 4, plural. This teaches that they desired many gods, and they did not desire to worship only the golden calf. The Gemara suggests say that whatever Asherim were worshipped by the Gentiles simultaneously with the Jewish people's worship of the golden calf should be prohibited, because at that time they acted as agents of the Jewish people. But any Asherah that was worshipped from that point forward, after the Jewish people repented and no longer engaged in idol worship, should be permitted. The Gemara answers, who can prove when each Asherah was worshipped? Since it is impossible to determine which Asherim were worshipped at the time of the golden calf, they are all forbidden. And now, new Mishnah. Avodah Zarah shenichua Avodah b'shas shav'ateret b'shas b'chamasua b'mosiois shel melachim harei elu mutaros mipnei shemamidin ota b'shas shemelachim ofrim. With regard to an object of idol worship that was abandoned by its worshippers, if it was abandoned in peacetime, it is permitted, as it was evidently abandoned by choice, and this constitutes an implicit revocation of its status as an object of idol worship. If it was abandoned in wartime, it is prohibited, as it was not abandoned by choice. With regard to the stone platforms of kings, upon which idols are placed in honor of the kings, these are permitted due to the fact that the idol is placed on these platforms only at the time that the kings pass by. Zog the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah, Bar Abba, Amar Rav. Beis Nimroid, Harehi, Kavodah Zarah, Shehi Nichua, Oivdea B'shas Shalom, Umuto. Afal Gabechi Badrinu, Rachmana B'shas Milchama Dabi. Ibaye Bao, Elmidar Hadur, Midla Hadur Batole Batelua. Rabbi Yirmiyah Bar Abba says that Rav says the temple of Nimrod, meaning the remnants of the Tower of Babel, see Genesis 11:1-9, is considered a place of idol worship, whose worshippers abandoned it in peacetime, and it is therefore permitted. This is despite the fact that when the merciful one scattered the builders of the tower, the situation resembled wartime, as they were compelled to leave. Nevertheless, if they desired to return, they could have returned. Since they did not return, they evidently chose to abandon the place of idol worship and thereby revoked its status. The mission teaches, with regard to stone platforms of kings, these are permitted due to the fact that the idol is placed on these platforms only at the time that the kings pass by. The Gemara asks, but should the platforms be permitted because idols are placed on them at the time that the kings pass by? Amar Rabba bar Yochanan bar Yochanan, hachikama b'nei shemamidin otan b'shas shemelachim ofrim u'nachman ish b'derech zo v'alichim b'derech acheres. Rabba bar Yochanan said that Yochanan said, this is what the Mishnah is saying. The platforms are permitted because the idol is placed on them at the time that the kings pass by, and sometimes the kings abandon this path where the platform has been placed and chose to walk on a different path. Since the kings do not impart any importance to platforms, they are not considered accessories of idol worship. Amar le Rav Yehuda leula, Yarav u'Shmuel Damriter Vayu, B'yemos shenivka maso, V'afilu leman delmo, Ein ovdim l'shvarim, Hanimid Avodah Zarah, Dezira be'mil salif lach l'shvarim, Aval haylo ichpas le. When Ula came from Eretz Yisrael to Babylonia, he sat on a damaged platform of idol worship. But Yehuda said to Ula, but don't Rav and Shmuel both say a platform that was damaged remains prohibited? And even according to the one who says that idol worshippers do not worship fragments of idols, that statement applies only to an object of idol worship, as it is a degrading matter to a person to worship fragments. But in this case, with regard to the platform, it does not matter to him if it is damaged, as it is still fit for use. Amalei Man yahiv lan me'afad derav u'shmuel u'malinan ainan edin. Ha Rabbi Yochanan v'Reish Lakish de'amri tervayu b'mos shenivgam mutar v'afil levan de'amal oivdin l'shvarim hani mili avodah zara dechem ne'para zila be'mil zara le'vatalo tale. Aval hani shakli ilahai Umaisu b'moisachrina. Ula said to Rabbi Yehuda, who shall give us the dust of the graves covering Rav and Shmuel? We would fill our eyes with that dust, as they were great and holy men. Nevertheless, with regard to the halacha in this case, don't Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish both say a platform that was damaged is permitted? And even according to the one who says that idol worshippers worship fragments of idols, that statement applies only to an object of idol worship, due to the fact that since he already worshipped it, it is a degrading matter to him to revoke his status. But in the case of these platforms, idol worshippers take this platform and throw it away and bring another platform that is not defective to replace it. Tanya Kavasid Yochanan v'Reish Lakish Bimos Shinivgam Mutar Mizbeach Shinivgam Aso Ad Shinatetz Rubo Hechida Bimos Hechida Mizbeach Amar Rabbi Yaakov Bait Yamar Yochanan Bimos Even Achat Mizbeach Avanim Harbe. It is taught in a Braita, in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish, a platform that was damaged is permitted. Conversely, an altar of idol worship that was damaged remains prohibited until most of it is destroyed. What is considered a platform and what is considered an altar? Rabbi Yaakov already says, and Rabbi Yochanan says a platform consists of one stone, an altar consists of many stones.